2024 was very interesting when it comes to the gaming industry. A lot of failures for our benefit, though. Let me put it that way. It wasn't failures for us. It was failures for the companies, but it was for our benefit because now we hope that these companies learn their lesson and actually give us what we deserve. If you're going to charge $70 plus for a game, give us what we deserve. It's a whole story behind that, and I don't want to talk. I could talk for a while, but 2024 was a huge wake-up call for gaming companies. Huge wake-up call. Whether they learned or not, we'll see this year. But regardless of the fact, with Ubisoft, Concord, so on and so forth, there's been, let's just say, those companies that be like, if you don't want it, then don't play it. People have not been playing. And companies are feeling it. And I said this before, it seems like when it comes to games, movies, and stuff, these companies forget how they get paid. They take us for granted. I said that's one thing I hate is when people, companies, whatever, take others, just people in general, take others for granted. I hate that. And I love seeing how that people are letting them know that they're not stupid. That, hey, look, you're not going to treat us like this. You're not going to give us half effort. You're not going to call men a certain word because they like women looking good. It's crazy how having a woman in a movie or video game look good is a crime now. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then the annoying thing too is they always point at the men. I know a lot of ladies, straight and lesbian, that say, I would like to look at a good looking woman too. I mean, I don't want to be sitting there, it's like, for me, for example, one thing I love about Dragon Ball is how muscular and all of them they are, is because it motivates me to get into the gym. And that's what the ladies be saying too. It's like, when I see such and such, I'm like, dang, I want to look like that. Let me go to the gym real quick, do whatever. Or they just like look at them just for whatever the reason is. But these companies, I don't know for what reason, have been pushing all these, not just that, but other agendas and putting huge price tags on things, but then giving half effort. And what was one of the things that's been annoying me for a while is when they charge $70 for a game, then the game is half done. Meaning if they need all these updates, all these fixes for the glitches, all this. It's like, bro, did y'all test the game? Some people, yeah. Anyway, so to see companies starting to get wake-up calls, it feels good for me. But I'm interested. They saying here, oh shoot, GamerX is saying 10 video game things that died in 2025. I'm interested in seeing what's 10. I didn't think it was that much, but hey, maybe it's something else we'll see here. But I'm going to put the original video in the description below. I hope the best for these companies, but I'm glad the customers, the people that pay their bills, is speaking up. And not always with this, but with this. We want a full game. We want to not be called certain names because we like certain characters. We want so on and so forth. We don't want to be overpriced by everything. One little skin, they charging $50. Stuff like that. We don't want to be told, this is actually a quadruple A title, knowing good and well that Bones and stuff was not even close. I wouldn't even call it a triple A game. I'm glad. And hopefully, because I'm an Assassin's Creed fan, it stinks to see what Assassin's Creed Shadows is going through, but it's necessary because these companies got to stop half doing stuff. Go all in, know what you're talking about when you make these games, whatever the game is, and yeah, so on and so forth. So it stinks as an Assassin's Creed fan, especially now I heard that they delayed it again, but at the same time, I'm happy because it needs to happen. All this stuff with gaming stuff needs to happen. Go back to, in a way, the way it used to be. But, I can talk for a while. Let me see what these 10 are.
Everybody's trying to make good games and sell them, but that's obviously not the only stuff that goes on in the video game industry. We see big budget flops, disasters, and fiascos all the time, and 2024 was full of them. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, 10
disrespecting the fan base like they did with Suicide Squad. Like, that stuff is no, bro. It's not accepted. And if that would have succeeded, imagine if Suicide Squad succeeded. They would keep doing it. So I'm glad it didn't.
Game things that died in 2024. Starting off with number 10, Game Informer shut down. One of the last
Oh,
major
really?
gaming magazines.
Oh,
finally
wow.
called it quits this year after being closed suddenly by parent company GameStop. They didn't even give them a chance to put out a final goodbye issue. The magazine was closed effective immediately, making issue 367 their final physical magazine. If you're a younger viewer, it's probably hard to imagine, but video game magazines used to be such an important
Yes,
part
it
of
was. What happened? I
We
guess
all had
social media, I
subscriptions
guess.
to stuff like Nintendo Power and EGM and Game Informer. And for most of us, it was our primary means of getting gaming news and reviews, and stuff like PC Gamer gave us demo discs, and a lot of us
Man,
played
I
games
remember
we
those
wouldn't be
days,
able to
bro.
buy for quite a while.
Those demos
that
were
way.
fun,
And
too.
we
They was
understood
short.
how
Like, they only
good
give you a
were
little bit, but it was
why
fun.
It was worthwhile to save up the cash to buy them. Of course, with the internet happening, the idea of a gaming magazine it saw an inevitable decline. It was slow, but inevitable. But Game Informer held out, mostly because they were owned by GameStop, who would sell subscriptions in their stores. I know that's why I was getting Game Informer years past the point where it made any sense to be getting a physical gaming magazine. Even if you weren't subscribed, it was just nice to know the magazine was still going. It was like a rock in the storm, in an industry in turmoil. Game Informer was one thing you could count on, so with it finally gone, it feels like the end of an era. Listen, gaming magazines weren't always the best. A lot of them were just product catalogs, pretend to be impartial news sources. Nintendo Power, I'm looking at you. Game Informer was mostly a marketing arm for GameStop, particularly in those final years. And who on earth is buying their news when they go online and get it for free? And free happens to be much faster.
It
There's a
stinks
reason
because
all
it's
these
something
magazines
I grew up
appear,
with.
but I can't help but be a
Man,
little
that's
nostalgic
something.
for them.
An end of an era.
And number 9 is platform exclusives. I know I'm putting my credibility in danger with this one, but I'm just going to say it. 2024 is the year where platform exclusivity died. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be totally gone. That would be totally insane for me to say. As long as Nintendo exists, there will be exclusive games, but not even on that basis. There's going to be other exclusives. But I think everybody just got fed up with it this year. I think it's done. I think they don't make as much money doing it. I mean, Astrobot getting Game of the Year just basically pissed everybody off that doesn't own a PlayStation 5. I understand it being a console exclusive, given how Sony related it is, but I mean, it would have made more money if it was out on every platform. Like, I would buy it on PC, not even a question. I hope they release it on PC so I can buy it on PC. I love it on PlayStation 5, but I just prefer playing games on the computer at this point. But one of the more noteworthy examples of it is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The relative success or failure of this game has been a pretty huge talking point. I mean, what does it say when a game that big, that looks that good, is reviewed that well, and is bought, frankly, a pretty fair amount, enough for Sony to give Final Fantasy VII Rebirth an award for being one of the 3 best-selling games on the PS5 in 2024. That's nothing to shake a stick at, but it did not meet the numbers that Square Enix projected and wanted. Now, there could be a lot of reasons why the game didn't do as well as the previous Final Fantasy VII Remake title, but the thing that the developers have decided is the scapegoat, per se, is exclusivity. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a PlayStation exclusive, and that's why it didn't sell as much. And that's a common refrain in the industry. AAA is just too big and too expensive to confine to.
I don't really play these
If
games,
these
so I don't
companies
have
wanna
much to
recoup
say on
the
this
cost
on this
in
matter. That's why I'm
development and
quiet.
make a profit,
I
they
do
need
want to
their
get
games
into
on
Final
as many
Fantasy
platforms
one
as
day,
possible. There
but
needs to be no friction.
I don't even know
in
where to
buying
start
their
with
games.
because there's so
The
many
old
of them.
ideas about exclusives drawing audiences doesn't seem to be working anymore. Like, I get a first-party exclusive much more than a third.
I miss it when Halo was one of the top games ever, bro. That used to be so much fun.
Bro, at least that's what a lot of industry.
Man, how times have changed
I
since
think the
Bungie
canary in
left.
the coal mine's the Xbox in 2024. They shifted their strategy completely away from being a dedicated platform. Remember that ad about how Xbox isn't just a console? It's kind of been a weird and worrying year for Xbox. Because in some ways, that ad seems kind of correct. I think too early to put a nail in the Xbox coffin. In fact, it could end up being that this is all a bunch of worrywart stuff that was unnecessary. I don't know. But whatever the strategy ends up being, it's definitely not exclusivity. Like, do I think that Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be on the PlayStation platform? Yes, I do. It would be incredibly stupid for them to limit it to Xbox when they are by far the least selling console behind the Switch and PS5. Switch 2 is coming too, and that's, I mean, just going to make exclusivity.
The Switch 2? Interesting. How they going to do that one?
And that's a
I
pretty
gotta research
big
that.
ouchie when you buy Bethesda in order to restrict big Bethesda titles to your platform. And looking at it, it doesn't really look like that great of an idea anymore. But like, Sony's a little less vocal about this, but they're being a little more flexible than they have been in the past. Who would have thought you'd see Horizon on a Nintendo console. I mean, it's not necessarily full-ass Horizon. It's a Lego game, but still. We'll see exclusives in the future, but it just, as a primary strategy for anybody but Nintendo, I think we'll see a lot less of it going forward because it's just not going to make the same financial sense it once did. And number 8, Microsoft closes the Xbox Live Marketplace. This was a little bit less of an unexpected thing. The Xbox 360 did define the 7th generation of consoles.
Wait, what?
And one of the key reasons was the Xbox Live Marketplace. It wasn't the first online console storefront, but for a lot of people, it was their first introduction to buying digital games. And
oh, you're talking about with older systems? I'm sitting here like, I was just on the store, but
it wasn't the best.
Older
there were a lot
systems,
of good
okay.
games on the marketplace, and a lot of them were exclusive. In the era where that mattered a lot more. Looking at the list of games, most of the significant ones can still be played on the Xbox One and beyond, but there are still some noteworthy titles lost to time, and that's gonna always suck. The marketplace was officially closed on July 29th, marking the end of an era for Xbox as a whole, and it's sad.
man, when is this new Gears of War game coming out, bro? Gears of War E-Day hasn't had any information since that one trailer.
That's nice. But
and
it's
that
always
was
a
it.
drag when online stores shut down. At least this one lasted longer than the PlayStation 3 support, and they gave a decent amount of warning before pulling the plug. But also, it wasn't the only online storefront to end. Like, online for both the Nintendo 3DS and the Wii U ended last year. And both of those are much more devastating closures from a game preservation perspective. But the Xbox Marketplace shutdown's pretty significant. It's an end of an era. Ignoring the whole Red Ring of Death
Yeah.
thing. The
Yeah,
generation
I remember
was a
that,
hell
the
of a
Red
time
Ring
for
of
Xbox
Death.
fans. So let's
That happened to me
the
multiple
good times
times.
rather than mourning what we lost, because seriously, those last few years the marketplace was barely usable. And number 7, Blizzard's big survival game, 6 years in the making, was canceled. 2024 was volatile. It was an uncertain year for the games industry. You'd think a studio as old and venerable as Blizzard would be able to weather almost anything. And
What
yeah,
happened to that game, bro? Like, that was a fun game. Hi-Fi, I think it was called. That was fun. I randomly played it, not knowing what I was getting myself into, and I had a blast.
Yeah, I mean, they're not closing. But it's another example of how risky the entire landscape is looking right now. The dead game in question is Odyssey, a survival game that was meant to be Blizzard's answer to Minecraft. On paper, great idea. I mean, any kind of proper competitor to Minecraft from a major studio is interesting, if nothing else. It's a market the AAA games industry hasn't even attempted to crack, well, other than this game, and it was canned before anybody got to really see it.
I used to
This
try
was
to get into
probably
Minecraft. It
more
is
of a
just not my
casualty
game,
of
bro.
Microsoft and
I get bored so
Activision merger
quickly.
than anything else.
I tried,
Another
too, for
byproduct of the
years.
mass layoffs
Oh,
that
way
hit
back
Blizzard in
when.
January of 2024. The total layoffs across the Microsoft gaming division
Dang.
is catastrophic. I'm talking
Wow.
1,900 people here. That's a lot of jobs, and Blizzard was not spared. They didn't just lose low-level guys during the reorganization either. Major figures in Blizzard, like President Mike Ybarra and their chief design officer, got the boot too. Blizzard's got a long history of games they were working on that eventually got canceled. StarCraft, Ghost, for instance. But Odyssey seemed like it was actually going to happen. Sure, it was suffering through internal issues related to the engine, but at least according to this Bloomberg article, it seemed like they were hopeful about the Microsoft acquisition and seemed to think it would get development back on track. Instead, the whole thing went off the rails. Like, who knows how Odyssey would have eventually shaken out. It could have been crap, or it could have revolutionized the entire survival game market. I don't know. And number 6, NFT games are dead. Like, really, really
Good.
dead. People were saying these things were done in 2023.
Yes.
But
I was shocked it
2024,
lasted this
gave
long.
us a complete reassurance that NFT is done.
That was just
The
a
verse,
quick-
the
that's
game is
a
dead. It's over, baby.
annoying,
Trying to find reliable
dumb
data
cash
on the
grab
decline of
stuff.
The entire NFT market is difficult because of all the blatant astroturfing from desperate startups trying to recoup their considerable losses by suckering some new schmuck into, coming along and holding the bag. But even a cursory look at most of these projects shows they're abject failures. That's the thing about NFTs.
Not
You can see
one
how
of them
many
looked good.
bought and how many people
I
bought
think
them,
Ubisoft did
and
it the
things
most,
are not
too, if
looking
I
so
remember
good
correctly.
in, the player-owned.
I heard they released the
play-to-earn
one
future
Quiet Labs.
market.
Can't remember what exactly it
value
was
is
called.
Generated just from playing
Oh
the
yeah,
game?
that's the one I saw. I think that was.
And,
I don't think
there
that was the
isn't an
Ubisoft
answer.
one though. It was
Okay,
something with
that's why this whole thing fell apart.
Was it
If
something
you
with
want
Rayman or
100%
something? I can't
reliable
remember.
proof that NFT gaming is done. Look at Ubisoft. I mean, this company has never seen a bandwagon to jump on way past the point of everyone else that it didn't want to jump on. In 2024, they released not just one, but 2 completely forgettable, worthless NFT games. Had the audacity to slap Rayman on Wii.
Okay,
Just
that's what I'm
shameful.
talking about.
The game sucked. Nobody cared, even remotely, and they immediately tanked. Making a game itself is risky enough, but throwing a bunch of
That's a waste of money, bro.
alienating NFT crap on top of it only makes it harder to find any kind of success. I mean, it's hard enough for companies to stay afloat with microtransactions that are pure profit, but now with NFTs, they have to deal with an entire player-owned ecosystem that could spiral out.
Yeah, that was pushing it. They was really pushing it there.
Nobody wants to engage, and that's all way too much for the average developer and the average consumer. They don't want to jump through a dozen hoops to just get the same things they could do in hundreds of other games without all the blockchain baggage. Like, nothing about NFT games ever really made any sense from a marketing or consumer perspective. It was just to say that it was involved in crypto. But NFTs, it's just an abject failure. There's no future in it. At number 5, Tetris is finally finished. Some madman finally beat Tetris. These old school arcade games can't be beaten in any conventional metric.
Really?
When you get to the end, they just restart and you play again. But eventually you can get a kill screen, which is the point where the game no longer functions. For Tetris, it was believed for years that actually reaching this kill screen was not humanly possible because the reaction time and the speed of the falling blocks was just too much. But in recent years, there's been massive innovation in the Tetris community and some insane strategies that allow people to keep playing the game even when blocks are falling so fast it's nearly impossible to keep up. The most impressive of these techniques is rolling, where players would rhythmically roll their fingers under the bottom of the NES controller. Seriously, it has to be seen to be believed. It sounds ridiculous, but it does actually work.
Who comes up with this? I mean, obviously it works, but who came up with that? I guess through a lot of trial and error.
Coming with entire new hand movement tricks to keep up the ridiculous speeds of the game.
That's crazy,
bro.
bro.
The person to finally reach the finish line and beat Tetris was, and I kid you not, a 13-year-old kid with the username Blue Scooty. The idea of some 13-year-old playing an NES in 2024.
Hey, salute to him.
Enough as it is.
Salute.
But, I mean, considering this was a 13-year-old kid who was hardly the only one trying to reach the mythical kill screen, but was the first to be there, that deserves some serious accolades. I mean, for decades, no one even believed this could happen.
Right, people twice his age, 3 times his age, they couldn't figure it out.
At number 4, Spec Ops: The Line was delisted. Another year, another high-profile game delisting. This is hardly the only game that got pulled from the online storefronts this year. There's an entire online website dedicated to tracking games getting delisted. But
you know what game they should bring back is the what is it? Ultimate Alliance, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2.
Silent Killer.
They should bring that back.
I barely even remember any of the licensed music on this thing, but all it takes is one. And you better believe 2K isn't going to fork over any cash to keep the music. They won't even do that for Grand Theft Auto games, so there's no way in hell they're doing it with Spec Ops: The Line, which sucks because it's a really interesting game. I'm not sure I would call it great, but it's a game that over the years I've grown to respect just for doing something very different.
Yeah,
it's
with that shocker.
It starts off like your standard third-person hoorah military shooter, and by the end, it's gone full-blown psychological horror. That's interesting, and no other game has quite managed to do what this game has done on scale. It's messy, no doubt, but the audacity on display is commendable, and it never falls apart, per se. It's one of those games that should be played, or at least be out there for people to play, so it really sucks it got delisted. Hopefully it'll get a second chance at life at some point.
We still got time left, but I guess when it said 10 video game things that died in 2024, I thought it was going to be talking about what I was saying in the beginning. But we still got time left, but I'm sitting here like, oh, these are not subjects I expected to hear.
Needs to be played, even if only for you to form an opinion on what the hell is happening here. At number 3, it's Suicide Squad, which lived and died.
Okay,
in
here we go.
2024, which, holy hell, it's weird to say that. We live in the future, don't we? Well, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League doesn't. But in all seriousness, with how big of problems we've seen this year, the failure of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League almost looks quaint. It was supposed to be a forever game, a live service experience that would extend far beyond the initial launch of the game, but just weeks after launch.
Do the game right, maybe it could have been.
The game had soft
a game that lasted for a while.
Claims that they lost $200 million on it. That's pretty bad.
Mil.
It wasn't really if the game is shutting down, just when. And to Rocksteady's credit, the game did at least keep going long enough to fulfill their pre-release promises and all the new characters in all their declining levels of interest, blah, blah, blah. So when they
Question on that. Someone said the only reason they stayed and finished up their season is because if they didn't, they would have got sued. Is that true? I didn't know you can get sued for something like that if you cancel it. Excuse me. I was like, They was like, yeah, don't give any credit to them. They did it so they don't get sued. I was like, I had no idea you can talk about a season pass or whatever that you're going to have and then cancel it before it's finished. I thought you could just refund everybody and then move on, but they say you can get sued. Let me know if that's actually true.
In early December, the final game up.
I love Deathstroke 2, but I refuse to touch that game. I refuse. That is an insult.
With any interest in the game knew it was coming. Did the game deserve better? Arguably, I might say maybe. Even with
a lot better
service junk, there was a little bit of that old Rocksteady magic buried in there. But the stuff they added into the game wasn't that exciting. And, you know, I'll go ahead and say this. If it wasn't a live service game, this game would have had so much more of a chance. Because they'd be developing it without the live service junk in mind. And the stuff that was good would be allowed to be, it would probably be, you know, backed up with stuff that Rocksteady does right, rather than, you know, live service crap that they clearly don't know what they're doing with. The stuff they added in was just the same repetitive live service slot tasks we're all getting sick of doing. And a few unsightly cutscenes stitched in to kind of justify new.
Yeah, that looked lazy how they did those cutscenes.
Mattered for the whole
what they did to Batman.
Feel substantial as it
and straight insult.
Live up to the quality presentation the base game had, which not great. It was free and the new characters were fun to play as, but it needed more. Some story progression, new missions. I mean, something that made it feel like more of a game rather than more of the game. The game that we got, you know. Unless that final update does something totally graphic, it's never going to be finished. The heroes everybody said would definitely come back in the future seasons. They'll stay dead and nobody will care. Because, man, things move fast in this industry. Suicide Squad kind of feels like it happened 1,000 years ago at this point. Who even cares?
It doesn't exist in a
Arkham
Arkham universe. They said it does. No, it does not.
To play the game can. That's more than can be said about a lot of games on this list.
Arkham Knight is the last one of the universe so far.
Studio before it even announced the game. For years, everybody was getting into video.
Wait, what happened?
Thinking it would make a said about a lot of games on this list. Number 2, Netflix shuts down a AAA studio before it even announced the game. For years, everybody was getting into video games.
That's right. I heard Netflix has a gaming site.
Floundering, trying to get a foothold.
Oh, Prime does too. So I didn't know all this.
Efforts haven't been a lot better. In 2022, Netflix started building the Southern California game studio. Didn't have an official name, and they were bringing in big guns like Overwatch producer Chaco Sonny and Joseph Staten, you know, the creative director at Bungie and 343. They also brought in the art director from Sony Santa Monica. I mean, there were big names in the industry, and that signaled Netflix was getting ready to step into the AAA games market. Team Blue, as they were called internally, they were doing big things. Netflix announced they were going to work on a brand new AAA multi-platform game and original IP, and then nothing. Fast forward 2 years, and all 3 of the guys I mentioned are no longer with the company, and the studio's been dissolved. We know absolutely nothing about the game that was going to be. No name, no concept art, no...
I didn't know. I forgot they had a... Well, I didn't know Prime had a game inside. I forgot Netflix did.
Mass Effect director David Gator, his new studio, Humanoid Origin, also shut down in 2024 without releasing a game. I mean, they at least had some kind of concept art. That's something, I guess, though. And at number 1, Concord, which lived and died in...
That's the obvious one.
Like a few weeks in 2024. 8 years in development.
I'm shocked they didn't talk a lot about Ubisoft. Well, I guess because it's not officially dead. And I hope it doesn't die. So that's probably why... Well, that is why he ain't talking about it. It's just Ubisoft had a lot of faults. And they could be on the verge of dying. But I hope not, because a lot of my favorite projects is in Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed, Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, Watch Dogs. It's a lot of fun games in there. That's why I wish they put more effort in that. When is the next Splinter Cell coming out? But yeah, that's why it's not on the list, though. It's not a dead.
By far the highest profile death of 2024. It's a weird thing because the game wasn't terrible. Like, you read anything about it and you assume it's a massive day before style disaster, but it's not. It's just a mediocre, maybe kind of subpar hero shooter that nobody wanted to play. You know, nothing particularly appealing about it. There were a couple of things that were cool, but they were certainly nothing that outweighed the lame crap that nobody cared about or didn't want. And if it wasn't the central pillar to PlayStation's entire online ambitions and didn't cost $200+ million,
goodness gracious,
it probably would have just been another forgettable online multiplayer shooter. Like, games like these come out and bomb all the time. Concord was supposed to be something special. At least someone at Sony saw something in this thing. Somebody thought that this, a half-baked Guardians of the Galaxy panache, was going to be the next big thing. It wasn't. Sales were abysmal. Nobody cared. Sony shut down the game after 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
I don't think I've ever heard of
The
that.
immediate
Of
assumption
something that's
was
this
that they
big.
were pulling a multiverses. They were stopping the game temporarily to retool, lay low for a few months, and relaunch as a free-to-play. But that didn't happen. Instead, Sony shut down the game permanently and closed the studio they'd only just acquired the previous year, along with a few other studios like Neon Koi, who yet again didn't even get the chance to announce a game. But hey, at least Concord lives on as a secret level episode, right?
I heard that was bad too. I didn't watch it yet, but I heard that was bad.
As an episode of the TV show.
That's probably why he was laughing when he said it.
It's all got to go down as one of Sony's most public and avoidable blunders. The cluelessness from every level of this is astounding. And I do have a quick bonus for you. All the other game studio closures. More than 21 notable game studios closed in 2024.
Dang.
And while I covered a lot of them,
21 in 1 year.
To mention.
Hey, I didn't know it
Names
was...
are, of course, the four from
Wow.
Bethesda, Arcane Austin, Alpha Dog, Roundhouse Games, and the Hi-Fi Rush developer Tango Gameworks. Arcane Austin and Tango hit hard. Sure, Arcane Austin...
That was such a disappointment, bro. I had so much high hopes for Redfall. That was such a disappointment.
The other Arcane wing is still in existence. But Arcane Austin made Prey, which is one of the best immersive sims ever. And Tango Gameworks was a memorable studio as well, with the Evil Within games, especially 2. They were awesome games. Tango was revived at Crafton, so that's good.
I love that
A lot of
game.
these studios were lucky. Piranha Bytes, the devs behind
Ghostwire
the
Tokyo was a lot of
really
fun.
Suffered in 2024. Well, Oka Studio, the guys behind Vision of Mana, they were shut down before the game was even out. Like, pour one out for all these studios. You're gone, but not forgotten. At least some of you. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do.
Well, I hope these game studios be learning now, bro. Stop. I already said what I said before. I have a habit. Once I start, I just keep going. So I'm like, okay, let me stop right there. I said what I said in the beginning. I stand on it, and life is showing that it's true. But yeah, I hope the best for these companies. It stinks to see 1,900 layoffs and all this other stuff. Companies shut down. But if you just go back to basics of making a game and the meaning of it, not your ideology, not what you know, how much money you can make out of it, make the customer happy, you'll get paid. But that's, like there I go. I'm about to start. Anyway, I'll put the original video description below. You can go check them out. And yeah, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think about what I said earlier. But yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. See ya. Here's hoping that 2025 is a better year in gaming. I hope so. Marvel Rivals is a good start for this year. I mean, I know it came out late December, but we'll basically say it's 2025. That's a great start. If games can do something like that, hey. But anyway, I'll move on. I'll talk to y'all later.